I want to first acknowledge that we continue to feel the impact of the pandemic, and at the Employment Department, we're fighting this pandemic on two fronts right now. One is working to keep all of our employees safe, and the other is working through the record number of unemployment claims that we're facing as a result of the pandemic. I do want to share some hopeful news. In June, we saw the number of unemployed Oregonians decrease. It went from 14.2% in May to 11.2% in June. That's dropping to slightly below what we saw as the peak unemployment level during the Great Recession, which was 11.9%. But we can't predict the future. We do expect to still see a very high number of unemployment claims due to the continued increase in the COVID-19 cases. Last week, I shared some general timelines of what Oregonians can expect regarding their benefits, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions about that later. Since the pandemic began in March, our department has implemented dozens of safety measures in partnership with OSHA and through guidance provided by the public health authorities, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, in order to keep our employees safe from COVID-19. We've been vigilant, and until recently, only 2 employees, and to be clear, that is still too many, had tested positive for COVID-19. It appears that now the virus really is everywhere. It's in our homes, in our communities, and unfortunately in our workplaces. As of today, 13 Oregon Employment Department employees in 7 different locations have tested positive for COVID-19. 2 were back in April, and the remainder have been in the past few weeks. Our Gresham WorkSource office has 6 confirmed cases of COVID-19. We made the difficult decision to close that office for 14 days to keep employees from that office at home for the duration of the virus's incubation period. Since the pandemic began, we've taken extensive measures to protect our employees. As a number of confirmed cases increases in the community and at the department, we're also taking additional preventative steps to keep our employees safe. We're notifying employees within 24 hours if they have potentially been exposed. Since the pandemic began, we've been asking all employees who are sick to stay home. Since the start of the pandemic, we have had OED offices thoroughly cleaned each night. We're about to require face coverings in all of our offices and locations, and we will provide face coverings for our employees. We've been telling our employees about this and urging them to wear face coverings now. Face coverings are not currently mandated in office settings where the public is not being served in person, but we're doing this as an additional preventative measure. We've been encouraging employees to wear face coverings if they can, and we've been encouraging employees whose jobs can be done remotely to telework. In general, employees who are able to work from home have been doing so. Our workspaces have been following the 6-foot social distancing guidelines, and our risk and facilities teams are reviewing all office locations to see what additional measures may be taken. We're really leaning on our management teams to lead by example, and we're empowering them to say something if our protocols are not being followed exactly. We're also empowering each of our employees to talk with their managers and with human resources or our safety risk team if they feel unsafe or need additional accommodations. Last week, we announced an agreement with the SEIU union, which represents many of our employees, to launch a pilot telework option for 20 employees. We've reassigned several Gresham office employees to participate in that pilot telework program, and the remaining employees involved with the pilot are adjudicators. This pilot will allow us to work out most of the kinks with the hopes of expanding the telework option more broadly. We believe we have mitigated the majority of the barriers to teleworking for most positions. The employees from Gresham who will be teleworking are going to be processing PUA applications, which is part of the training that they are receiving today. They were already scheduled to be added to the teams doing PUA work before the Gresham office had to be shut down. To date, we've received about 515,000 claims for regular unemployment insurance. This is just under a 950% increase in the number of people we paid in all of 2019. We've paid more than 300,000 Oregonians about $2.89 billion in benefits since this pandemic began. With the PUA program, we've processed about 40% of all of the PUA claims that we have received. One thing we're tracking closely is that thousands of the PUA claims we've processed and thousands more that we haven't yet processed are either duplicate applications or are for people who have already received benefits under the regular unemployment program. In one way, this is encouraging news. It means that the 55,000 applications remaining to be resolved represents many thousand fewer people who are waiting for benefits. I do want to share the numbers about the PUA applications. So far, we've received just under 102,000 applications for PUA benefits. We've entered over 40,500 of those into our system, and about 24,500 of those people have received PUA benefits. We've been working on Focused PUA, which was a goal of resolving the 70,000 PUA applications that were around then by August 8th. Last week, we processed over 5,500 applications, leaving us with about 55,500 to process. I am disappointed that despite the very hard work of our employees, we've not yet met our very aggressive weekly goals. Despite that, I remain cautiously optimistic that we will meet our goal by August 8th, and we're doing everything that we can to do so. We're taking lots of different actions, including soon launching the new PUA application, adding more people to do this work, including 80 more this week processing PUA claims, creating an escalation team to better address claims that have been moving between different teams of experts. And now that we have data about the program and the work to be done, every day we're tracking that data and making real-time adjustments to how we do the work. So while the number of claims left to be processed is still high, as we are processing them, we're seeing a lot of duplicates and cases where people are actually eligible for and already receiving regular unemployment benefits. In the WorkShare program, we are now currently reviewing employer WorkShare plans in real time. The next step of the process after reviewing a plan is to process claims from individual employees covered by those plans. We've paid about 42,000 of those claims. In the 12 months prior to the onset of the pandemic, we had about 168 employers participating in WorkShare. Now, more than 1,400 employers have signed up. In the past 2 weeks, we processed about 27,000 WorkShare claims. We've been rapidly speeding up this process and making significant progress. The Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, or FPUC program, provides an additional $600 to people who qualify for benefits between March 29 and the program's scheduled end date of July 25th. Anyone eligible for benefits between March 29 and July 25th will still receive the extra $600, even if they haven't been paid for those benefits by July 25th. The Federal CARES Act ends the extra $600 for any unemployment benefits claimed July 26 or later. So that means that the last week for which the extra $600 can be paid is next week's benefits. While Congress is considering a possible extension or replacement of those benefits, we don't know if a bill will pass, and if it does, what exactly those benefits might be. As I've been sharing, one of my top priorities, which we believe is the most important thing we can do to ensure people are getting their unemployment benefits more quickly and are getting the best customer service experience possible, is hiring more staff. Prior to the pandemic, we had about 100 employees working on unemployment claims. As of today, we have about 900 employees working on unemployment claims. That includes regular unemployment, PUA, and WorkShare. And besides increasing the number of employees, we're also increasing the training and experience as they work for us for longer. Late last week, we launched a new website, unemployment.oregon.gov. Just this week, the website has received more than 56,000 unique new visitors, so it's clear that the need for more information is great. People have been most interested in the frequently asked questions, filing claims, and the eligibility quiz. I wanted to call out a few of the features of this webpage that we believe are helpful to Oregonians. We have a new Contact Us form where customers who've been waiting the longest can send us a message with their information so we can prioritize their claim and we can more quickly get it to the employees with the expertise to address their particular concerns. Currently, we're taking inquiries about weeks people have not received benefits for from May 23rd or earlier for regular unemployment, May 30th or earlier for PUA, and June 20th or earlier regarding the benefit extension programs. The Contact Us form also includes an option for people to upload their worker authorization or I-94 documents. The website has more than 150 frequently asked questions, and we encourage people to visit the website if they have questions rather than calling the hotline. It includes information about the new Federal CARES Act benefit programs, and it has an eligibility quiz to help people figure out which program to apply for. We also have step-by-step videos and guides about how to apply for regular unemployment and for PUA benefits. We have resources for employers about the WorkShare program, about reopening your business, and more. Other resources available to Oregonians while they wait for unemployment benefits, or for those who unfortunately don't qualify to receive benefits under any of the programs we administer, are also available. These resources include benefits to help with rent, utilities, health coverage, or groceries. We'll continue adding features and information, so we're strongly encouraging people to check back frequently. And again, that website is unemployment.oregon.gov. Within the next few business days, we will launch a new PUA application to allow people to more easily file new PUA claims and weekly PUA certifications. This online form will help prevent some of the common issues we've seen with applications, and importantly, will largely automate the process regarding weekly PUA claims. This means people will be able to get their PUA benefits more quickly and more consistently. We'll be sharing more information as that program launches, but we're going to urge people to file their PUA claims using the new system. And that includes submitting their weekly claims for prior weeks of PUA benefits they haven't yet received. People aren't required to do that, but if they do enter those into the new system once it's available, it will make it much quicker for those benefits to get paid to people. It's worth mentioning again the new language assistance hotline number that I mentioned last week. It's 503-606-6969. We're asking that only people who need assistance in a language other than English call that hotline. It is being professionally translated. Our new website is being professionally translated into 15 languages posted on our previous site, and those previous pages will remain available until we post the newly translated information on the new site. This is a very large translation project, and it embodies our value of community and strategic goal of engaging with communities across the state to maximize awareness and use of public workforce resources. In working to meet the same goal, we're also continuing to collaborate with our partner agencies on community outreach to limited English proficient communities and other communities that experience systemic barriers, and we'll provide more updates on that as more work is done. Earlier today, I was pleased to join the Oregon Latinx Leadership Network Town Hall, and it was great to talk with the Latinx community members and community advocates about how we can better serve their members. I also want to remind people that we have a dedicated language access inbox. It is OED_languageaccess@oregon.gov, where people can request a call back in languages other than English. I mentioned last week that we expect call volumes to remain high for several more months. I also shared that in February, about 47,000 calls were made to our UI hotline. In April, that grew to over 20 million. We're working with our phone carriers to better understand this data, but we know that the use of auto dialers is flooding our system and making it more difficult for Oregonians to get through to talk to us. We know people are desperate for their benefits, but using the auto dialers has significantly impacted our phone capacity. Today, we're asking Oregonians to please not use auto dialers. We also want, once again, to remind people to check the status of their claims online and to visit unemployment.oregon.gov before calling the hotline. And again, I'll reiterate that you do not need to call us for your weekly PUA claims to be processed. You should call the hotline for the following reasons, though. If you get a notification that there is an issue with your claim, if it's been 4 or more weeks since you claimed your regular benefits and you haven't received payment or heard from us about your claim, if you're unable to file your claim online, or if you receive a letter of concern and need to provide us with additional information, and to confirm or accept a combined wage claim workup, which involves wages that were earned in another state. I want to reiterate that all of the staffing and hiring changes we've made over the past few weeks are going to be more noticeable in terms of how quickly we'll be able to process claims and in the customer service we're able to provide. I know things aren't going to feel much better until every Oregonian gets all of the benefits they deserve. Please continue to hold me accountable. I'm committed to being transparent and sharing both the good news and the bad. My hope is that I will be able to share better news in the coming weeks and that you will start seeing and feeling the changes we've been able to make. I'm grateful to be serving in this challenging role, and I'm even more grateful for every employee here who, despite concerns about their own health and safety, is working so hard to get benefits to Oregonians. I want you to know that I hear from you, and I'm committed to doing right by every employee and by every Oregonian that we serve. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Now we are going to open up the line to take your questions. First is Lindsay Nadrich with Coin. Please go ahead, Lindsay.
Oh, there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, are you able to comment on the lawsuit that was filed against the Employment Department for people still waiting for benefits?
Unfortunately, we really can't comment on pending litigation, Lindsay.
Okay, I figured. I just wanted to double check. We saw the Oregon legislature passed a bill to do $500 relief checks to people. Any idea how quickly that could happen and what needs to happen so people can get those?
I don't really have much information. We certainly understand. We see every day how difficult it is for people that are waiting to get benefits or for people that aren't eligible for any benefits and that are in just an incredibly difficult situation. We support all the efforts of the legislature and other agencies to do whatever can be done to help those people that are in such a desperate situation. At this point, we really don't have a lot of details about what that might look like, though.
Thank you.
Next, Peter Wong. Please go ahead, Peter.
Hi. I hesitate to bring this up, but Congress being what it is, I believe the Senate returns next week. And so the deadline for the extra unemployment benefits is coming up. Is the agency prepared to handle an interruption? Should Congress extend in some form the benefits at whatever level they choose to? And second, if they make it retroactive, is that going to make give the agency additional difficulties?
That's a great question, and it's one that we've been talking about a lot. I think it's probably an overstatement to say that we're prepared to handle whatever might happen. It really depends a lot on what they pass, and at this point, we don't know what's most likely. We have been in discussions, and we've seen several different concepts that are under consideration. We have shared that it is much easier for us to implement and to get the benefits to people quickly if there is no interruption. So if whatever the new benefits are, if they're passed early enough that there's not a break and then they're made retroactive. If they are made retroactive, that is an additional complication. Some of the proposals that we've seen, we think would be relatively easy for us to implement, probably taking less than a month for us to do the programming. Some of the other proposals have been incredibly complex, and Oregon and other states have shared that it might take many months for us to be able to do that. That is a concern because we know that the intent is to get money out to people who need it, and we really want to be able to do that as quickly as possible. So we've been sharing which proposals look much easier for us to implement so that we'd be able to help people with those benefits more quickly.
Okay, thanks. No follow-up.
Thank you, Peter. Kate Davidson with OPB. Please go ahead, Kate.
Thank you. Can you just tell us a little bit more, Director Gerstenfeld, about the new PUA application? I know you've got more information coming, but is this the Google form, the web-based form, and what are the common issues that you mentioned that you think it will resolve?
Sure, this is the application that Google's been building for us, and it does a couple of things. One is it's just an easier, it's a web-based form, much more similar to the types of ways we're used to interacting with more modern systems. Some of the common issues that we've seen are applications that get sent to us blank, because the current system that we were able to put together quickly it requires people to download a PDF document, to save it, to fill it out with information, and then upload it back to us. And we've seen a number of applications where, because of the timing of how it's saved, we get the application, but it hasn't saved the information on it, so it's blank. This will avoid that problem, which will be a very big benefit. It also has some built-in reminders for people filing. So we've had some applications where some essential information wasn't provided, things were left blank. And this new application process will, in some cases, not allow it to be submitted until that needed information is there, and also give some prompts to people about information that will speed up our ability to process things. One of the less immediately visible things, but which will be a huge benefit for everyone, is that the weekly claims, I've mentioned before, right now, every weekly claim for benefits, one of our employees has to touch and do some work on for the benefits to be paid. And that is causing some interruption in benefit payments now for PUA. The new process will automate that. So the vast majority of that work will happen automatically, and it will make it much, much quicker for those weekly benefits to be paid out quickly and consistently.
Can I ask a follow-up, which may or may not be related? Can you talk a little bit about the process of restarting a claim, why that would be necessary, and what might go wrong to cause delays in that process?
Sure. The restarting a claim is something that can cause an interruption in payments, and that's on either pandemic unemployment assistance or any of our benefit programs. And I've talked a couple of times about how we have things built into our system that work well when we're in normal or even recession economic conditions, but are not working well now when we're in an unprecedented recession and a pandemic. So there are several different things that can cause a claim to need to be restarted. And that could be that someone was claiming for a period of time, stops claiming, and then starts again. It can also happen if people are claiming and reporting that they've had some earnings, and then they report that they no longer have earnings. And those are things that flag claims so that we can do investigations into things that we're required to investigate, and to make sure that if there are issues where someone might not be eligible, we're catching it early so that we don't end up having to try to recoup benefits if someone received them and doesn't meet the legal requirements. In normal times, those claims get flagged and we're able to address them very quickly. With the vast number of people filing now, we haven't been able to. So those are some of the challenges that we're seeing. We've been working all along to address those restart issues internally where we can, many times before anybody even knows that there's an issue flagged on their claim. Early on in the recession, we did some work to see where we could change some of our automated processes to minimize those issues. And we did that, and that was helpful. We've been continuing to look at that, and we are making additional changes this week that should significantly reduce the number of claims that require a restart.
Thank you.
Okay. Grant McKill with KXL. Please go ahead, Grant. Grant McKill with KXL, please go ahead. Mike Rogaway with the Oregonian. Please go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Hi, David. A couple questions around the infections at the Gresham site and overall. I understand from workers that a fourth worker tested positive there on July 2nd, but the Gresham office didn't close for almost a week. And then call center workers hadn't been required to wear masks before. Why not? I guess my questions are, why did that office not close sooner? And why weren't people required to wear masks earlier?
I guess a few things. One is that the situation, not just here, but in the general community, has been evolving rapidly. And I think we've seen that with starting out with very few restrictions or guidelines, and then additional restrictions being placed as the Stay Home, Save Lives order was issued. And then seeing the economy start to open up, and we see that things that we had hoped would be safe were not stopping the spread of the virus as much as we had hoped. We are following all of the public health guidance. So specifically about wearing face coverings, that has not been required in offices, and it still is not required for the environments that we're working in, for office work environments that are not open to the public. So although it's not required, we have been increasingly urging people to do that wherever possible. And as I mentioned, we've told people that we are moving towards mandating it. Really what we're waiting on now is to have all of the face coverings available so that we can provide it to people who don't have them themselves. But in the meantime, we're urging it, and we're clearly telling people that we are going to be requiring it in all of our workplaces. And in terms of closing down the work site, that again is not something that is required. And we've been communicating with public health officials and looking at what should be done. When we did see an alarming number of cases, we decided that that was the best thing to do. So we did close it down. That's why we're leaving it closed for the incubation period, and why we quickly changed our planned pilot project to allow the people that had been working there to work remotely so they wouldn't have to be in the office. And in the meantime, we've also been doing a lot of other steps in all of our offices to make sure that we're following up not just on what's required, but on other steps that we can take to keep all of us safe here.
Okay, thank you, David. Now my follow-up is on the same topic. How much is, I realize some folks are teleworking now, but how much are the infections and the closure of the Gresham office slowing up processing?
It's hard to say, partially because I mentioned that particularly with the PUA program, we're making changes pretty much in real time. So it's hard to look from one day to the next and say what any one change, what impact that's having. Certainly, the fact that we have a number of employees that have tested positive is devastating to us, it's devastating to them, and those employees are not able to work as we and they hoped they would be able to. To minimize the impact of closing down the business or that office though, the Gresham office, that is why we shifted the telework pilot and prioritized getting equipment to all of those people so that they could work from home. So for people that are not able to work because they're ill, certainly they're not able to work. But for the other people that worked in that office, we were actually able to keep going with what was planned already for this week, even though the Gresham office closed, which was to get them trained on processing PUA claims to help us get through those even quicker. And that is still going on according to plan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Bill Puller with Statesman Journal. Please go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, hi, David. So with the employment department workers getting sick with COVID, has that slowed down claims, and does a further outbreak have the potential to slow down claims processing further?
It certainly has that potential. So whenever anybody's, to make it at the most basic level, if somebody is ill and not able to work, that means one fewer dedicated employee trying to get those claims processed. So far, we always have people, every large employer always has some number of people that are not at work for one reason or another. We are very concerned for our employees. And certainly if more and more employees are not able to work, whether for COVID-19 or any other reason, that could have an impact on how quickly we can process the claims.
Okay, so well, with the face mask mandates, there have been guidances with the CDC. Is that the requirement? We've heard complaints from from OSHA. Was there a reason why you guys held off on that, on requiring that, other than it not being mandated?
Well, I think the guidance has changed over time and has been largely to wear face coverings when the 6-foot social distancing can't be maintained. And then there have been the mandates for certain other situations that don't apply to our workplaces. We did structure and in many cases restructure the physical workspaces to ensure that there was 6-foot social distancing between workers, and we took other measures as well. I think this has been an evolving situation for everyone. And certainly as we're seeing everywhere in the state and in most parts of the nation that the virus is continuing to spread, we did think it was appropriate to continuously re-examine what we can do to further protect our workers and further limit the spread.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Tom Cusack with Oregon Housing Blog. Please go ahead, Tom. Tom Cusack with Oregon Housing Blog. Please go ahead.
Yes, I have a question about work-share and public employees. Clearly, the use of 100% federally funded work-share has the opportunity of saving public agencies tens of millions of state and local dollars. So yesterday I went and dug out, there's at least 15 agencies I was able to identify on the web that basically say that they have work-share agreements. And looking at just 5 of those, they had more than 11,000 employees who should have been covered by work-share. So my question is, what percentage of all the work-share employees, which I think David said was 42,000, are employees of public agencies here in Oregon?
And I don't have that breakdown, and I'm hesitating a little bit because we have to be very cautious when we're sharing any information to make sure that we're doing it in a way that comports with the federal and state confidentiality requirements. I can make a couple of comments that may help give some context. Just because an employer is participating in work-share, sometimes all of their workforce is covered by the work-share plan. Frequently, that's not the case, and it's only a portion. It could be most, or it could just be a small portion. So I wanted to give that context when you're looking at the numbers that you're finding. In terms of what proportion of all current work-share claimants work for public employers, I don't have that information.
Yeah, if I can follow up on that, David, I've asked this question for quite a long time, and I can certainly understand about individual public employee agencies, but in terms of just breaking it out, public versus private, I can't imagine there's a big issue with that, and I'm a little bit perplexed that I've not been able to get an answer to that question for a couple of months now.
Sure, and again, right now I don't have the answer in front of me to share, even if I was confident that we could. Even when we're not talking about an individual person or employer, there are federal and state requirements around not releasing information that could be in conjunction with other publicly available information used to really get a picture of what's going on regarding unemployment insurance with a person or an employer. So we do have to be very cautious around what we can share, even if it's not naming one employer, one individual worker, if it can be associated reasonably with a really small group of workers or employers.
Next, Keaton Thomas with KATU. Please go ahead, Keaton.
Hi, David. Thanks for taking our questions again. I guess first, this is a follow-up to, I think, what Peter had asked you. I spoke with Senator Ron Wyden today, and I wanted to ask you specifically about his proposal because I just wanted to get your take on the difficulty of implementing it. But he's proposing like a $600 continuation of the benefits as long as the employment rate is more than 11%, and it goes down by $100 every time there's a drop in a percentage point in the unemployment rate in Oregon. So it's 11% now, so we get $600. If it's between like 10 and 11, I think it would be 500 and so on and so forth. So I guess my question is a proposal like that something that would be difficult for you guys to implement, or is that something that would be pretty straightforward?
I'll give you kind of a range because it ranges from not too difficult to exceedingly difficult. Certainly anything that has more changes going on increases the complexity. So having the dollar amount change over time is a complication. Some of the things that were the biggest potential complications, though, that would have been, or that could be kind of orders of magnitude more difficult for us to implement, were where the dollar amount that people get varied not just over time, for instance, based on the unemployment rate, but within any one time frame, different people getting benefits would have a different additional benefit amount. So when we put it on the spectrum, that proposal of having it be a flat dollar amount that applies to all workers, but the flat dollar amount changes over time as the unemployment rate changes, it's not the simplest of the proposals for us to implement, but it is probably in the middle range and certainly not as complex as some of the other ones that have been discussed.
And then my follow-up question for you is just much more general. We've been doing this, or we've been in this, pandemic situation for about 4 months, and I'm curious, how do you think the Oregon Employment Department response stacks up with some of our neighboring states like California or Washington?
It's a good question, and I've been looking at how different states are doing. I think I've shared in this forum before that every state has struggled. The details of how it plays out has been a little bit different in different states. So for instance, there are some things where Oregon did very well. We got those extra $600 payments started. We were at the front end of that, and we started that. For instance, comparing to Washington, we started those payments before Washington State did. They started those extra $600 payments later than we did, but they were able to put a PUA system and some of the extension programs in place at the same time. So I think we continue to struggle with adjudication and with the PUA program. Those tend to be the pain points that other states have had. We're certainly avoiding some of the biggest challenges that some states have had with either massive fraud taking place early before we were able to really know what warning signs to look at to better combat that. We don't have people that are having to physically show up and stand in line for hours or in some states overnight waiting to get their benefits, which particularly in a pandemic, of course, is disturbing. So I don't by any means want to minimize the challenges that Oregonians are facing waiting to get their benefits, but honestly, it is a challenge nationwide, and I'm not aware of any state that has been able to handle this as they would want to and as the people needing benefits would want to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keaton. Claire Withacombe with Statesman Journal. Please go ahead, Claire.
Hi, David. Thanks for the time. I wanted to ask, in light of this new program that lawmakers passed this week, is there any way in which having DAS stand up this new program could add to the employment department's workload and, sharing information between agencies, for example?
It's really too early to know. I know that everyone that the legislature certainly want to help everyone. And I think there's I believe that there is a common understanding that we all want to get money out to the people that need it, and that the employment department is absolutely focused on getting the PUA claims processed, at working through the adjudication, that getting the money out to people that's owed under existing programs that are our direct responsibility, that's our focus. We work with other agencies all the time. We have information sharing agreements, and it really depends on what the details are, what information is required, when it's required, what format. Some of those are things that we're already doing with other agencies and would be very easy. Some would be more complicated. But for now, we're really focused on paying people under the existing programs, and then certainly helping our fellow agencies any way that we can as they try to help Oregonians in need.
Okay, thank you. And then I just wanted to confirm one thing about the mask requirement. Are workers currently wearing masks in employment department offices, or has that actually started?
So we do have employees wearing masks. The requirement that people wear masks in all offices has not yet been made effective. And that's because we have ordered face coverings so that we can provide that, so that if we have employees that don't have one of their own, that they're able to comply. But we have been urging people to do it. And certainly there are lots of people wearing the masks. And as soon as we have all the details ready to go to implement, it will be mandatory. And that's something that we've told our employees so that they can prepare and that they hopefully are wearing masks all the time now.
Okay, and do you have any sense of when that shipment is actually going to arrive?
I don't have that information in front of me, I'm sorry. We've been checking on it regularly, and I know that our safety and risk team has been following up and doing everything they can, and that we are not alone in trying to order lots of face coverings. So we are anticipating it. I know that it's not too far off, but I don't have the date in front of me.
Thank you.
Next, Marissa Olid with KTVL. Please go ahead, Marissa.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to briefly touch on, I know phones are very busy right now, and for people who still haven't received claims, what would you advise the best way to go about it so they're not waiting on hold forever?
So one great tool would be on our new website. We have the Contact Us form. So if you go on there, there's a Contact Us. You can submit information, and it's doing a couple of things that make it the best option. One, you don't have to wait on hold. It also tells us a little bit more detail about what the issue is that you're contacting us about, so that we can do a much better job of having the first person that connects with you be the person with the experience to address the particular issue with your claim. And it's also helping us prioritize the work by the people that have been waiting the longest. I mentioned that we understand why people are using the auto dialers, but it's really flooding our systems. And right now, the person that gets through on the phone might be someone that's been waiting the longest, who we absolutely want to prioritize. It could be someone else who still needs to talk to us, but maybe they just filed their claim last week. And we're just simply not able to prioritize incoming calls the same way that we can the information coming through on that form. So that would be my recommendation for people trying to get in touch with us.
Great, thank you.
Next, Cassandra Gutierrez with KMTR and KVAL. Cassandra Gutierrez at KMTR.
Oops, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Thank you for your time today. Quick question, what is the difference between processing a PUA claim and regular unemployment claims in regards to how fast someone who's been unemployed receives their unemployment check?
There's a few differences. One is that the PUA process is much more manual, and it has been from the start, and that because the program didn't exist on March 27th when the law passed, and we were able to stand the system up in about a month, but that meant that we had a huge kind of backlog of pent-up demand for those benefits. So between that and the manual process, it does take longer. There's also a requirement before we pay anybody PUA benefits that we first validate that they're not able to get regular unemployment benefits. So we essentially have to do just about all the work needed to process a regular unemployment insurance claim, plus some additional checking of some information and some more manual work. So it does take longer, and that does mean that it takes longer from when someone first files the claim to when we're able to get the benefits paid.
Awesome. And now, do you have a timeline for those who don't know if they qualify for unemployment yet, when they might know?
Sure. And again, it gets a little complicated because there's so many different programs that frequently we're telling people you're not eligible for one program, but you may be eligible for another. If somebody's applying for regular unemployment insurance, they should get that initial determination within 4 weeks. And that's why we're saying if you apply now for regular unemployment insurance and you haven't either received your benefits or heard from us that you're not eligible for them within 4 weeks, that is something that we want to know because we would be prioritizing that. For PUA, it's taking longer because we still have that pent up demand for benefits as we're working through all those claims that were filed when the program first came into existence. So at this point, I talked about our goal of having those initial 70,000 that we were working through for PUA claims done by August 8th. That's still our goal. So if somebody's filing a new claim now, it likely would not be resolved prior to August 8th. It might be if it was a really straightforward one, but if it's a brand new claim, we are trying to focus on the people that have been waiting longer, so it likely would take until after August 8th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Eden Don with Portland Monthly, please go ahead, Eden. Eden Don with Portland Monthly, please go ahead. Are there any other reporters on the line who have not had a chance to ask questions? If so, please go ahead.
This is Cassandra, and I just asked the question. May I ask what the best way for people to follow up in regards to not knowing whether or not they've received they're qualified for unemployment?
Sure, Cassandra. And I would point people again to the Contact Us form on our new website. And we are encouraging people, we're putting dates up there to try to give people a little bit of kind of an idea of where we are in working through claims. So we have those dates that I mentioned about when you should file. I believe that, so if you're inquiring about benefits under the PUA program, if it's not about weeks of benefits that are from May or earlier, it will still take us some time, unfortunately, to be able to get to that. If it is from May or earlier, then they can use that form to submit it, and that's in the group of claims that we're prioritizing. And for the regular unemployment insurance, it's that 4-week window. We have that date posted on there to let people know, and we'll be changing that as we continue to gain ground on the outstanding applications.
Thank you, sir.
Mike Rogaway, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. David, a follow-up. I wanted to ask about WorkShare. Do you know the current backlog that you're looking at for individual claims through that program? You said at the beginning, I believe, how many had been processed, and what the timetable is right now for new WorkShare claims to get processed.
I don't have those numbers in front of me. I can tell you it depends a little bit on the individual circumstances. I've mentioned in the past, I think, and today, that some WorkShare plans can have just a small number of employees. So if we get a plan in that covers 5 employees, it's much easier for us to get those claims started as we're reviewing and approving the plan. If it's a plan that comes in that has hundreds or thousands of claims, that obviously takes a lot longer for us to get all of those processed and to start paying the benefits. So I don't have the backlog numbers. I know that looking at the daily reports that I've scanned, the pace of our getting through those WorkShare claims has vastly increased this week compared to last week. And it was a vast increase last week to what it was the prior week. So we have over 100 people that are working on WorkShare, where normally it's 4. And those teams have really started to get the experience to work through those very rapidly. So the lag time for all of those is rapidly decreasing, but I don't have the details in front of me on that.
I appreciate it. And real quick, 2 weeks in a row, I think you haven't met your targets for PUA. Is there a succinct way to say why?
It's really hard work. Is the most succinct, and we have been making a lot of changes that have made some improvements. Some of them haven't improved our production as quickly as we thought or as much as we thought. And I think that's what it boils down to.
Thank you.
Can I ask, do you know how many people have already filled out that contact us form by chance?
I'm hesitating because I looked late yesterday and I don't remember the number, and I'm sure it's many more by now. I will say that this is something where we went live late last week, so we're still adjusting to this. And as with all brand new programs, I'm going to be upfront that we know there will be some bumps as we get used to it, but we are working through those. We saw a pretty high volume. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now. I'm sorry.
No worries. And then a general question. I had a couple people say that they were getting benefits for a while and then suddenly were asked to provide proof of their authorization to work. So basically they needed a copy of their front and back of their green card. So they did that, they mailed it in, and now weeks have gone by. They have yet to get a response and have not had benefits come back. Have you, why would that suddenly happen, and kind of what is the process for that?
So one of the areas that the contact us form can absolutely be helpful is if people have been asked to provide information showing their legal authorization to work in the United States. People were mailing that in to us frequently or faxing it, and those work. We will get to them. But again, there is that backlog. So if it comes in the mail, it's coming in with all of the other physical mail that we're getting, which is a lot. So the contact us form has a specific option to choose where you can indicate that you're providing with that message your proof of authorization to work in the United States. And you can attach a photo of that authorization, and that will very quickly go to the team of people working on those issues. So that will significantly, very significantly speed up our ability to resolve those issues. In terms of what causes that, we are required by federal law to validate that each person is legally able to work in the United States in order to pay them benefits. For many people, that happens through an automated check between our claims computer system and the federal government. When that check doesn't give us an okay, then we are required to get proof of their legal authorization to work in the United States. So this could have been a situation where we were paying benefits pending that okay, and then we found out that it wasn't received. That's kind of a guess on my part about what exactly triggered it in that particular case, but we did go out of our way with the new Contact Us form to provide that new avenue for people to provide that documentation so we can process it more quickly.
And then,
I have a follow.
sorry, go ahead, I can ask.
Could I ask a follow-up question? I just want to go back through the math that I think you said, David, in terms of the number of persons who have been paid. I believe you said the regular was 300,000 and the PUA was 24.5, which is 324.5. And I believe last week it was 290, the combination of those two numbers. Does that increase sound about right to you, about 34,000 increase in a week?
So the over 300,000 number was inclusive of all of the programs, so that included the PUA people.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just have two more questions if I could. Do you know any updates on the waiting week or gross earnings, or is that still kind of the same as last week?
They're both pretty much the same. The only thing that I would add on the waiting week is, of course, our ability to focus on that may depend somewhat on what, if any, federal legislation is passed with a new benefit program. So we're keeping an eye on that closely. But otherwise, for the gross versus net issue for PUA, we're still waiting for guidance from the U.S. Department of Labor.
And then lastly, do you know how much of Oregon's $5 billion unemployment endowment is left?
We have about $4.5 billion in the state unemployment insurance trust fund. So that continues to be something that Oregonians don't have to worry about. We're already seeing, the last I checked a couple days ago, it was over $11 billion that I think 9 states at the time had already borrowed, and we're really expecting to see that number go up quite a bit in the near future. That does not look to be in Oregon's future, so all of our projections so far, we anticipate remaining solvent, not having to borrow money, and not seeing any sudden or severe tax schedule changes for employers.
Thank you.